Who are W.E.B. Du Bois and William Monroe Trotter? Both of these men were African American rights activists during the Progressive Era, which spanned roughly from 1890 to 1920. You may not have known that these two men had a pretty in-depth history as friends, co-workers, and later, rivals. A few of my classmates and I set out to find out about these two and their importance in our country's history and in the African American rights movement. But in the process of making this documentary, we encountered some roadblocks. We found it much more difficult to find the right information we needed with the sources that we had at hand. We wanted to know the truth, and it was proving a little bit more difficult than we thought. We were able to find out a few things for sure. Du Bois and Trotter worked together to found the Niagara Movement, an organization formed in July of 1905 to combat racial segregation. Du Bois also worked as a sociologist, historian, author, and editor. Trotter also worked as an editor, but for The Guardian, a newspaper he founded and would go on to edit for until his death in 1934. But when it comes to the two of them together, things start to get a little complicated. Conflict broke out in the Niagara Movement, which led it to disband in 1910, but the reasons why are again a little complicated. Some sources say the failure of the Niagara Movement was due to a disagreement between Du Bois and Trotter. Others say they both just left to form the NAACP, yet only Du Bois was responsible for forming it out of the two of them. A quick Google search on why the Niagara Movement really ended reveals another confusing dead end. After reading these online sources, we didn't know what to trust, so we took a quick trip to our school's library to hopefully find some more reliable sources. Is there any way that we could talk to somebody about
research,
where we could find stuff
research?
About somebody?
Yes, that's what we do. I would love to talk to you about research. What are you trying to find?
We're trying to find information on W.E.B. Du Bois and William Monroe Trotter. Is there anything that you know about their relationship, Du Bois and Trotter? We were directed to the online databases on our library website, where we encountered much of the information we had already found. So still in an effort to find the concrete truth, we decided to ask Dolita Cathcart, a professor at Wheaton College in Massachusetts. She specializes in race, class, gender, and identity, as well as the history of the Americas and African diaspora studies. She was also a part of the documentary, The Birth of a Movement, which focuses on Trotter's protest against the early film, The Birth of a Nation. We decided to first get some basic information on who these two men really were.
Who was William Monroe Trotter?
A man. This may be the easy part. A man, an activist, a journalist, a Bostonian. Very interesting character overall. William Monroe Trotter flourished, had no problems in school. He was the only black kid in his high school, but was voted president and was class valedictorian. Went off to Harvard, where he received an AB and a master's degree. Students who did far worse than he, while in school, all went on, to daddy's, finance concern and what have you, and did quite well. And he was struggling trying to get, a job. And that is what I believe what really kind of caused him to become an activist.
Who was W.E.B. Du Bois?
So they're very similar. I mean, they're 4 years apart, right? Du Bois is 4 years older. He grew up in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. Also, obviously, African American. His mother was of mixed heritage, so, he was light-skinned. He saw real poverty when he was in the South. And he's trying to teach these kids have nothing. So it gave him a real understanding of what the conditions of, again, the majority of African Americans were in America at that time. And it also, though, gave him the idea that it would take people like himself, so college educated, etc., to really make all the difference.
We then switched focus to the Niagara movement.
So one thing that was really clear to African American activists in the late 19th century, early 20th century was that a national organization needed to be founded. So about 1905, a bunch of activists, Dubois and Trotter being sort of the main ones, at the time, a couple of other folks as well, put out an invitation to about 59, 60 kind of anti-Booker T. Washington, folks. The meeting was held in Ontario, and it went very well.
Then we found exactly what we were looking for.
Problem came up was that women wanted to join the organization as well. Trotter didn't want any women. Dubois wanted to have the women part of the organization, so there was a bit of a tussle. The Dubois folks won, so women were able to join. And there was another struggle. Trotter really wanted to be sort of the number one guy in Massachusetts. But if you're going to be political, you need to be able to play politics, and he wasn't very good at playing politics. It ended up that Trotter kind of left the Niagara movement, and the Niagara movement kind of fell apart.
So how can people who may not have access to professionals really find out the truth?
So you're going to hate the answer. You got to read more. The folks who are more likely to really go in deep are those who are going to continue with school afterwards. Those are the folks who actually have the time, right, to read everything that was ever said about Trotter or Dubois or so. And of course, being a good critical thinker, then are able to make up their mind regarding what is true and what is not.
Throughout this process, we realized how much we were focusing on what we couldn't find and not on what we already had. Delita made us understand how the only real way to find the truth is to basically think more. People like Trotter and Dubois were in some ways lost in our country's history, and it's only been recently that more stories are being told about them. So for us, critical thinking and reaching out to those that are knowledgeable from critical thinking was our way of finding the truth. There was a reason it was more difficult for us to find what we needed. It's a reminder as students and people that not all of the important stories of our past have been told, and it may just be our job to tell them.